Why can't we have perfection in this life, right? Why do people die? Why do people get sick? Why are people hungry? Why are people poor? Maybe we can create some sort of political system and pass the right set of laws and have the right constitution, and therefore we'll create this quote-unquote paradise on earth. And then they try to do that, and then you get Pol Pot's Cambodia, or you get Nazi Germany, or you get the Soviet Union, you get these kinds of things, and that paradise on earth becomes quite the opposite. Allahumma alimna yanfa'na وانفعنا بما علمتنا زدنا علما انك انت العليم الحكيم وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى اله وصحبه اجمعين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الوهم وقربنا بنور الفهم وافتح علينا معرفة الحلم وسهل اخلاقنا بالحلم واجعلنا من الاسلامين قولا تبين احسنا وبعد. So alhamdulillah, first of all I'll start by saying jazakallah khairan to all the brothers here at the city central Masjid here in Stoke, mashallah, for the invitation. And for the hospitality, mashallah, Brother Qasim, Brother Mama Amr, mashallah, all the brothers were involved. And for the warm welcome, jazakallah khairan. It's my first time here in Stoke. All I know about this place is long free throws, but alhamdulillah, it's good to hear, mashallah. So this topic, alhamdulillah, yes, I heard some of the introductions about this topic of depression and anxiety, and why people, even if they are quote-unquote regarded as successful, people are seen as quote-unquote having it all, money and fame and so forth, they still end up very much depressed. They still end up with alcohol problems, drug problems. They end up in rehab. Some of them commit suicide. We have to get deeper into this. So let's start off, I should start off first by talking about where the story of this book comes from and what the purpose of this book is, and why this is how this is all relevant. So, the story of this book goes back a couple years ago. But Imam al-Bulti himself, Imam Muhammad Sayyid al-Bulti rahimahullah, the great Shaykh from Damascus, he did a TV series. It was actually a 10-part TV series under a giant rubric as part of a larger series called Dirasat Qur'aniyya, literally Quranic studies, right? And he's done several of these. It's a long series, but it has several subsections. He's done one on the Masjid of Allah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in the Quran, like 10 parts. He's done one on like a shukr in the Quran, 10 parts. The Sahaba mentioned in the Quran, 10 parts. There's lots of these little series, and so one was Al-Ka'aba, called Al-Ka'aba. And again, 10 parts. And so my friend of mine and I, who's the co-author, Brother Hazm, he's an old friend of mine. We go way back to high school days, mashallah. We listened to it and we loved it, and we thought this would be great. This is something that we could put into a book. So that's what we did. We translated it. We transcribed the Arabic, translated it. I spoke to the Imam's family, the Imam's grandson, Dr. Mahmoud al-Bulti, about this. He said that you have permission to go ahead, but you cannot directly ascribe it to him, right? This is one of Imam al-Bulti's things he put in his wasiyah, is he said he did not want any of his audio or visual material to be directly transcribed, i.e. written down, and then attributed to him, right? So that's why we had to say on the cover, we had to say based on, right? It's not direct. And also that gave us some leeway just to edit it in the sense that, obviously, because it shouldn't sound like a TV show, right? Right? We're not calling it, episode 1, episode 2. No, it's chapter 1, chapter 2, right? And so forth. So we updated a few things here and there. Like for example, when we were preparing it, because I think this was given it was first presented about 20 years ago. So Imam al-Bulti, what he would talk about, for example, is he would make this distinction between Western societies and Islamic societies, right? That's what he would say. So Western societies have all these issues and all these problems, which they do, whereas Islamic societies are different, right? Now my friend Hazm, old friend of mine, he's Egyptian, and he said, yeah, but look nowadays, right? A lot of the stuff that is so-called from the West, a lot of it has come to the East, right? A lot of it's in the East as well. So we changed things like this. We said, okay, let's talk about secular societies and Islamic societies. Not necessarily Western, but let's talk about secular societies versus Islamic societies, and let the reader decide what he thinks is the more secular society, what he thinks is the more Islamic society, things like this. So, few things to bear in mind here about this book. So this book is not a book of psychology in the conventional sense nowadays. Now the word psychology, if you look in the Oxford English Dictionary, which is their authority, their maraja, their authority, psychology nowadays, it means the study of the mind. That's what it means nowadays. They've reduced it to a material thing. So it's all about the mind and what the mind can do and you know, chemical imbalances in the brain, all that kind of stuff. Whereas the original meaning of psychology was actually the study of the soul. That's what it was, the study of the soul, the study of the spirit, right? You can check in the Oxford English Dictionary because the OED, as its short form, it gives you the older definition first and then the later ones, right? So the older definition is the study of the soul. So this book is psychology in that case, not in this case, right? Then you will notice that Imam al-Bulti talks about types of depression, anxiety, and he links them to certain causes, right? And he calls these causes hidden or underlying. So what he's getting at is, again, in the secular framework of psychology, in the secular framework, when people talk about depression and anxiety, they tend to talk about something that's more apparent. They'll say, okay, well, so-and-so is depressed because he lost his job. So-and-so is depressed because he had a divorce. So-and-so is depressed because someone in his family died. Right? But they're not looking at the bigger picture, as in, this person's actually depressed because he doesn't know who Allah is. Right? There's something much more profound. He doesn't know why he exists. He doesn't know why he's alive. He doesn't know what's going to happen later on. That's why. It's not the immediate apparent thing. There's something deeper. And this is why he calls it's hidden or underlying. And these are things that are never considered within a secular paradigm. Right? In fact, it's a lot of psychologists, as I've seen, and I've spoken to people within this profession over the past couple of years, they've told me that you're actually not allowed to talk about that stuff, right? So, for example, if a psychologist, doesn't matter what's Muslim, Christian, whatever, if a psychologist says to a patient something like, I think you need Jesus in your life, right? He can get struck off, right? That's how severe it is. So, now, what this all gets at is when we're looking at what Imam al-Bulti is getting at is when we're talking about depression and anxiety, is he's saying that if you are depressed or anxious, do not jump to the conclusion that you have some sort of mental illness. Don't jump to the conclusion that you need some sort of antidepressant, you need some Zoloft or some Prozac or something. That's what's wrong with you. No, he's saying, first and foremost, you have to look at your relationship with Allah. That's the starting point. What is your relationship with Allah like? What are your prayers like? What are your du'as like? What's your dhikr like? How is your dependence on Allah, your tawakkul ala Allah, right? And this should not be something controversial, right? Someone's like, well, what do you mean, my relationship with Allah? Well, we're not prophets, we're not angels. There's always going to be something missing, right? So when it comes to our relationship with Allah as normal human beings, when it comes to our relationship with Allah, there's always, always, always going to be room for improvement. There's always something we can do to improve. There's always some bad habit that we can leave off. There's always some good habit that we can take on, right? No matter who we are. There's always somewhere that we can build up. Because again, if we say, I'm fine the way I am, well, that's the disease of ujb. That's the disease of self-satisfaction, right? That in itself is a disease of the heart, right? So we want to move beyond that and ask Allah to protect us from that. So, and then the final thing to say here, the final thing as a preliminary point, is that when we learn about depression and anxiety, this doesn't mean that we read this book or we understand this thing or I give this lecture or I turn into a course, whatever it is. It doesn't mean that after this we walk away and our lives are easier. That's not going to happen, right? And mashallah, I appreciate that really the Qari who read that ayat before, where Allah says, فَاذْكُرُونِ اذْكُرْكُمْ وَاشْكُرُوا لِي لَا تَكْفُرُونَ, right? Which is Surah Al-Baqarah, ayat 151. But then right after that, Allah says, وَلَنَبْلَعَنَّكُمْ بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ وَالْجُوعِ وَنَقْصٍ مِنَ الْأَمْوَالِ وَأَنفُسِ وَالثَّمَرَاتِ وَبَشِّرِ الصَّابِرِينَ. Right? Allah says right after that, like, we will test them. Right? And the way Allah has written it, Allah says, وَلَنَبْلُوَنَّكُمْ. Right? There's like a lam tawqeed, a noon thaqila, right? Allah is making it very, very clear. If you were to translate that accurately, it would be like, we will most assuredly test you. Right? Without any doubt, you will be tested. بِشَيْءٍ مِنَ الْخَوْفِ, with fear and hunger and lack of wealth and lack of children. All these things you'll be tested with. So there's no walking away from the tribulations. But what's going to happen is you're going to understand why these things happen. You're going to understand why these calamities take place. And you're going to be able to root all of this in your slavehood to Allah. In your slavehood to Allah. And recognize that this is the nature of this world. And this is the nature of relationship with Allah. That these things happen. So, what's going to happen is when you have that knowledge, you're going to be competent and strong enough to deal with the calamities of life. Right? Because they're going to happen. There are so many things that we've already faced in our lives, and we know there are things that we have yet to face. Right? We have to face our own mortality. We have to realize that over time, we all know, for example, that we're going to die, our parents are going to die, other things are going to happen. We know these things are going to happen, so we have to prepare ourselves. So, Imam al-Bulti, he lays them down in five, he narrows them down to five causes. But he starts off with an ayah from the Quran, because again, we're talking about the treatment according to the Quran, and this starts with Surah Yunus, ayah 57, where Allah says, Ya ayyuhan nas, qad ja'atkum maw'idatun min rabbikum wa shifa'un lima fi sudur. He says, all mankind, admonition has come to you from your Lord, and a cure or a healing for what is in the hearts. Right? This is what the Quran is. It's a healing, it's a cure for what is in the hearts. So, when we talk about tribulation, when we talk about calamities and disasters, we can't measure them. We can't measure them in terms of the outward, right? So for example, we can't say that, well, so-and-so must be very, very happy because he has a big house and a big car and a six-figure salary, and he must be great, and he's having a lovely life. And so-and-so over here, who's blind and poor and disabled in a wheelchair, he must be miserable, right? We might make that assumption on the outward, right? This is discussed in the book, Man, Law, Justice on Earth. He says we can make that assumption and say, okay, well, so-and-so must be happy because he has that situation. So-and-so has this situation because of, he's sad because of his situation. But he says, no, the tribulation is not measured that way. Tribulation is measured by how it affects the heart, how it affects the soul. So he said, so for example, the person who has the big house and the big car and the six-figure salary, whatever, he might have sleepless nights because he's always stressed. He's always worried about, okay, what about my investments? What about my properties? What about this? What about that? He might have a very, very stressful life, right? Whereas the person who's blind and disabled or poor and in a wheelchair, he might just be content with Allah. He might sleep well at night and just think, okay, this is what Allah willed for me, and khalas. And he sleeps and he's patient with his Lord. You see? So we can't judge it that way. So he says that where it all rests is in the heart. That's what tribulation is. It all rests in the heart. And he says here, and then he quotes the other ayah in Surah Al-Nahl, 97, where Allah says, "Man amila salihan min dhakrin untha wa huwa mu'minun فلنحيينه حياة طيبة ولنجزينهم أجرهم بأحسن ما كانوا يعملون." So anyone who acts rightly, male or female, being a believer, we will give them a good life. Right? Unless we give them a good life. So what is a good life? What is hayatun tayyiba? He said a good life is not sitting on a beach somewhere, sipping pina coladas. That's not a good life. Right? A good life is when your heart is in the right place. That's what a good life is. A good life is when your heart is free of anxiety, free of worry. It's a heart that can go through all the tribulations of life, but stay with Allah and stay at peace. That's what a good life is. It's not the outward, it's the inward, the state of the heart. So, he breaks it down to these five causes. I'll go over them one by one. And again, we have to say that, Allah, and again, Allah is the creator of the heart, right? That's why we say when we're in tribulation, one of the things we should say is, Ya muqallib al-qulub, thabbit qalbi ala dinika, right? I'll turn over, the one who turns over the hearts, make my heart firm upon your deen. So, to break this down, the Imam lays down five causes, and I'll go over them one by one. So, the first cause is it's like the foundation of the other ones, right? So, the first cause is simply not knowing the reality of life. That's the first cause, right? And the second is the fear of death. The third is fear of the future. The fourth is the second is fear of the future. The third is fear of adversity and affliction. The fourth is fear of death. And the fifth is the inability to achieve personal ambitions. So the first one we get into is not knowing the reality of life. So we have to take this back to square one. Okay. We have to talk about who we are and where we are. In Surah Al-A'raf, the 7th chapter, verse 172, Allah tells us that He gathered all of the progeny, right? All the souls of the children of Adam, right? And He said to them, Alastu bi rabbikum? He said, am I not your Lord? This is before any of us entered into this world, right? Allah said to all of us, Alastu bi rabbikum? And every single human being said, Bala shahidna. Indeed, we bear witness that you are our Lord. Every human being admitted to this, right? Now, someone might say at that point, I don't remember. Well, of course you don't remember. You don't remember because your memory is based on what? What you remember is based on what you see and what you hear, which is based on your eyes and your ears. We're not talking about eyes. You didn't have a body back then, right? You were merely a ruh, right? You were just a spirit. But you said, Bala shahidna. You said that. Everyone said, we testify. Now, what we gather from that ayah, right? And this is the starting point we want to understand depression. What we gather from that ayah is that as human beings, there was one point way back in the past where we were all in Allah's presence. We were all in Allah's presence. And then we left and we came into this world. Your body doesn't remember this, but your ruh does. Your ruh yearns for that meeting with Allah again. And this is why even unbelievers will say this at times. They'll say no matter how good life is, they'll always say there's something missing in my life. There's something missing. There's something incomplete. There's something deficient. This is what this is. This is the starting point. And there's a whole appendix about this because there's another book by Imam al-Bulti called Al-Hub fil Quran, Love in the Quran, and he explains this in detail. So your ruh reminds you of this moment with Allah. And how your ruh does this is because the relationship between your ruh and your jasad is this. In this life, your ruh is subservient to your jasad. Your spirit is subservient to your body. So whatever your body goes, your ruh follows. But in the akhirah, that's the other way around. In the akhirah, your jasad is subservient to your ruh. Your ruh has that freedom, right? So when we talk about human nature, the ruh loves to see space. The ruh loves to see openness. The ruh loves to see as far as the eye can see. That's what the ruh loves, right? And when we think about this, all right, and I challenge you, right? If you go on Google and just type in quotation marks, type in spiritual retreat. Type in spiritual retreat. Now, it doesn't matter who does it, whether it's Muslims, Christians, hippies, New Age freaks and weirdos, whoever's doing it, that spiritual retreat will always, always, always take place somewhere natural. It'll be on the countryside, it'll be in a mountain range, it'll be by the seaside, something like that. It doesn't, these spiritual retreats, they never ever take place in a car park, right? Or in an airport or something like that. They're always in some space where people can see everything. Because as Muhammad Bulsi explains, he says, when you go outside and you look at a big scene, like you see something that's bigger than yourself, you're looking at a mountain range, or you're looking at the ocean, you feel this, right? He said at that moment, your ruh feels relief, and your ruh is saying, when am I going to go back to be with Allah? That's how your ruh feels at that moment, you see. And that's, subhanAllah, and that's this wisdom of why, for example, again, if you think back to like the COVID days especially, the COVID days, let's say the term, but if we think back to those lockdowns and things like this, Imam al-Bulti makes his point, is that you can be in your house, you can be inside, and you can have everything you need inside, right? You can have food and drink in your bedroom, and you have everything you need inside. but eventually you want to go outside. You just want to go outside to see something, right? It's not enough just to be inside. It's like, okay, fine, I have all my stuff. But you want to get outside and you want to go on a balcony. You want to look at something. You want to see as far as the eye can see. So this is the first thing to bear in mind about the nature of the ruh and where we come from. And this is why, again, this life you'll always feel that something is missing. So that's point one. Point two along this line, point two on this topic is another point about where we come from is the fact that we are not from Earth, right? We're not from here. You can read in Surah Al-A'raf and Surah Al-Baqarah, ayahs 29 and 30, read in Surah Al-A'raf, ayahs 10 and 11, where Allah says, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَ لَكُم مَا فِي الْأَرْضِ جَمِيعًا, right? He's the one who created for you everything on earth. That's Baqarah 29. But then in the next ayah, إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً, I'm placing a khalifa in the earth. Adam alayhi salam and Hawa, they come from where? They come from paradise. They come from Jannah. That's where we were created. And then we came down here, right? And this answers that question, like, is there life on other planets? Are there extraterrestrials? Right? Yeah, there are extraterrestrials. Us. Right? We're the ones, we're not from here, right? That's why again, when you fly on a plane and you look down before you land or you take off, and you can see the clear difference between, nature, and then you start seeing the roads and the villages and the towns and the farmland. It looks like an invasion. It is. Right? We don't really fit into the natural landscape, so to speak. Right? We take up space from the animals, we take over land, we build and all that kind of stuff. Because we're not from here. Right? So, and you can look at this from like sort of an innocuous level, and then you can look at it from a more profound level. Like at an innocuous level, and I make this point when I do this talk, is that we're kind of like immigrants. We come from Jannah and we try to recreate where we came from, here. So, for example, everyone knows what botanical gardens are, right? Do you have them in Stoke? Botanical gardens? Sorry? I'm sure you do somewhere. We have them in Bradford, right? We have one in Lister Park, right, Faizan? Right? So, botanical gardens, clip here. Botanical gardens are like nature, but not as nature intended, so to speak. Right? Botanical gardens, and I've looked this up, they're pretty much every major city in the world, where you're going to find this place where you have nice trees and plants and hedges, and they're very well trimmed, they're very well taken care of, and there's always, always, always a water source. Some sort of river or stream or fountain or something, right? You go in, you're like, Jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anhar. It kind of fits the description. Human beings love this stuff. Right? There's botanical gardens for everyone to look at. And when people are wealthy enough to afford it, this is what they do. Right? When someone can afford it, he'll put it in his backyard, he'll put it in his front yard, put it in the fountain, put it in gardens and trees, and they all do it. Where's that coming from? Right? It's trying to recreate where they came from. Now, but if we take it to a deeper level and we link it to depression, we have to think here, okay, the other thing we know about Jannah, is that it's a place of perfection. Right? People don't get sick, people don't die, people don't get hungry, people don't get depressed or anxious. Right? So we come from a place where we expect perfection, where we're used to perfection, right? And this, as we've seen, especially in recent history, this can have disastrous consequences amongst secular people, because there have been, especially in the 20th century, there were lots of political movements called like utopian movements, where people tried to think, okay, why can't we have perfection in this life, right? Why do people die? Why do people get sick? Why are people hungry? Why are people poor? Maybe we can create some sort of political system and pass the right set of laws and have the right constitution, and therefore we'll create this quote-unquote paradise on earth. And then they try to do that, and then you get Pol Pot's Cambodia, or you get Nazi Germany, or you get the Soviet Union, you get these kinds of things, and that paradise on earth becomes quite the opposite, right? Because they're not realizing the whole picture, that that's not what this life is. This life is the dunya, this is not Jannah, right? But when we understand as human beings that we come from a place where we're used to perfection, We kind of expect perfection. We're not used to things being imperfect. It bothers us. But when we accept that, then we're like, aha, this is the dunya, it's not Jannah, right? Again, the ayah quoted earlier from Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 155, where Allah says, we're going to test you. When you understand that, then you think, okay, yes, these trials and tribulations are going to happen. Allah has told me they're going to happen. So therefore I need to prepare for them. And then you understand, you put all this information together, you understand that because you're Allah's abd, you're Allah's slave. And therefore, to manifest your slavehood is really one of two states. You're either you're going to be patient or you're going to be grateful. You're going to be patient with tribulations, and you're going to be grateful in times of ease. Now, here's an interesting question that people ask, and this is something that's kind of misunderstood, is people say, okay, who's better? Is it the patient poor person? Or is it the grateful wealthy person, right? Which one's who has a higher maqam with Allah? Is it the patient poor person or the wealthy grateful person, right? And people will jump and say, oh no, it's the patient poor person, right? Because obviously the other guy, he has wealth. But the reality is it's actually the opposite, because shukr, gratitude, is rooted in patience. Because gratitude to Allah, what does it mean to be grateful to Allah? Grateful to Allah is not just saying, alhamdulillah wa shukrillah. It's not just on the tongue. Gratitude to Allah means to use all the blessings that you have, every blessing that Allah has given you, whether it's wealth, whether it's health, the gift of sight, the gift of hearing, the gift of whatever it is, to use all the blessings that Allah has given you to please Allah. Right? Now, a wealthy person, someone who's a millionaire or whatever, he has lots of money, he can do whatever he wants. But he has to control himself and be patient with his desires and put his gifts, especially his wealth, towards what pleases Allah. He's like, okay, can I give in sadaqah? Can I help people out? Can I invest this in something beneficial? Right? He's tested. Whereas the patient poor person, he's patient because he has no choice. He can't do anything. He's limited his means. All right, so these are things to bear in mind. So this is the nature of this world. So we have to understand, therefore, that this world has a creator, and there's a system that we're part of, and this is where we come from. And once you understand this, then you're prepared to deal with all the trials and tribulations that come your way. And the other thing is you have to believe in Allah, and you have to take it further. And this is why, again, people have to again, you have to work on your relationship with Allah and understand that once again, even for people who are unbelievers, a lot of them, they struggle because sometimes they can accept that there's a creator. They can say, okay, this world must have a creator because everything else a maker. They reach that conclusion, right? But then they don't take the next step. Then they don't take the next step and say, okay, has this Lord communicated with me? Has he sent prophets? Has he sent messengers? Is there revelation? Right? And therefore they get cut off. So, and again, when we look at an Imam in the book, he gives lots of ayat about this, about Allah calling on man and calling on man to come to him. And for example, Allah says, Ya ayyuhan insan innaka kadihun rabbika kadhan famulaqih. Oh man, you are toiling laboriously towards your Lord, but meet him you will. Right? You are going back to Allah. And this, then, if we tie it into, right, and this is, again, Imam Al-Bulti in this chapter, again, talks about, again, psychologists, right, they don't talk about this, right, because they are rooting everything in matter, right, and they're saying that if you are depressed, it's going to be because of some sort of a chemical imbalance. And oddly enough, and this is the way Allah willed it, when we were preparing this book back, we started writing this book it's like the summer of 2022, University College London did what's called an umbrella study, right? Where they took all the studies that have to do with quote unquote chemical imbalance in the brain as this being a cause of mental illness or cause of depression. Then they put this all together. They put all the studies together and they examined all the studies like as one group, as one collection, and they came to the conclusion that the evidence for this is actually quite slim. It's actually not a very sound thing. It's all you have chemical balance in the brain. It's flimsy. right? It's just been repeated over and over and over again. People are just like, oh yeah, come on, right? Like Google said, just repeat the lie enough times, everyone will believe it, right? People just accept this, but it's actually not true. But because they're stuck in matter, these secular psychologists, they don't go further, and they don't understand that yes, depression or anxiety can be reflected in the brain, it can be reflected in the nerves, but the cause again is something deeper, right? And it's a spiritual reason. It's not a material reason. Okay, keep an eye on the time. The second reason is the Imam talks about fear of the future. And fear of the future. And this is one of these things about the idea that people always worry about, okay, where am I going? What am I heading to? Right? And people fear, okay, what's going to happen to my job in the future? What's going to happen to my house in the future? What's going to happen to my kids in the future? All these things that people worry about. And this does tie in again with the fifth cause, which is the fear or the inability to achieve ambitions. But to summarize this very, very briefly, this section, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, is we have to submit to the fact, when we think about the future, we have to understand, obviously, everything's under Allah's qadr. Everything is under Allah's will. But we also have to understand that Allah knows what is best for us. Right? So there's the ayah in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 216, where Allah says, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالُ وَهُوَ قَرٌ لَكُمْ. Right? Fasting has been prescribed for you. Sorry, not fasting. Fighting has been prescribed for you. And you dislike it. Right? And then Allah says, أَسَعَ أَن تَكْرَهُ شَيْءٍ وَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ وَأَسَعَ أَن تُحِبُّوا شَيْءٍ وَشَرٌ لَكُمْ وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ أَنْتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. He says, perhaps it is the fact that you dislike something and it's good for you, and perhaps you love something and it's bad for you. And Allah knows and you don't know. Right? Now, Imam Muhammad Wali Sha'rawi, rahimahullah, the great mufassir from Egypt, who's, alhamdulillah, I translated parts of his tafsir many years ago, he when talking about this ayah, he said, this ayah should tell you that your du'as are always answered. You should never ever say that your du'as are not answered. Because he said, put it this way, when you make du'a to Allah, all right, you're asking for a house or a job or some sort of problem to be solved or something good to happen. He said, fundamentally, what are you asking for when you make dua? What are you fundamentally asking for? Can you tell me? Betterment. Health. Health. Help. You're asking for help. But what do you, like when you ask for like a job or a house, or like what do you believe about that thing? Exactly. You believe it's khair for you, right? So that's what you make dua for, unless you're a psychopath, you're asking for sure, but you're believing that something is khair for you. That's what the dua is. That's what core of the dua is, right? So the point is this, when you ask for these things, you're asking Allah for khair, but you're asking for what you think is khair. But Allah knows what is khair, right? So Allah answers the core of your dua, not the branch of it, but the core of it. So Allah will not give you something or give you something else because Allah knows that this is khair for you. Right? And we get caught up in this. And again, I'm sure if you just stopped and reflect, were to stop and reflect and think about situations in your life where maybe you really, really, really wanted something and you were asking Allah for that thing, and then it didn't work out, it didn't happen, and maybe you were upset at that time, but then you look back like 3 months later, 6 months later, you realize, oh, phew, alhamdulillah, whew, dodged a bullet, right? Right? Like maybe you applied for a job at a certain company and you really, really wanted that job and you thought the job would be great for you, and then it didn't work out, and then you find out that, oh, that company like went bust or something, right? Or it went under, right? Or maybe you really wanted to marry a certain sister and it didn't work out, and then she married someone else, and then they had major issues. Like, ooh, okay. I didn't know that. Seriously, all these things can happen. There's all these things you can think about where you really, really wanted something, and it didn't work out. And if at that time you were upset, but then you realize later on, oh, subhanAllah, right? Allah was actually protecting you from something, right? Allah gave me the khair that He knew as opposed to the khair that I thought. You see. So that's something to bear in mind when we're talking about the future, when we're talking about working towards things. And again, this is what the Imam Buti stressed in this case, that you have to keep working, keep yourself busy. This is not a problem that people have now. People in this issue is that because depression has become almost like a fetish. It's almost like a fetish nowadays. Like people like to say, I'm depressed, right? Make a social media post, I'm depressed, right? And it's like one of my friends, he's Irish. He told me a story about how he was on a bus in London, and he saw like an 80-year-old Englishman talking to some young guy. Maybe he was like 20 years old, and the young guy says to the old man, he says, "Yeah, I'm depressed," and the old man looks at him and just says, well, "Do something." Don't just sit there wallowing in your misery. Do something. What are you doing with your life? Right? And this is what again these ayat are saying. Like keep striving towards your Lord. Keep yourself busy. You see, it's like there's a story, what is it called? Like the wise horse. I found this story online. It's like a picture book, and there's a boy and a horse, and they're walking through the forest, and the boy says, "I can't see my way out of the forest. I can't see the way out. I can't see the end of it." And the horse says, "Can you see the next step?" I said, "Yes." Well, take that. Take that, right? So maybe you're in a situation you can't see where it ends. You can't see it. Fine. But can you see the next step? You do that. Take that next step and put your trust in Allah. But it's very, very important to keep yourself busy and keep working, keep striving, and then put your trust in Allah, right? Keep yourself busy with whether it's your job or your business or again, or private studies. Don't leave your time just idle and just right, wallowing in self-pity and misery. Right, always preoccupy yourself with something beneficial. Of course, and it should be something beneficial, not video games and Facebook and all kind of stuff. Like beneficial things. I'm sorry, Facebook. I'm dated. Instagram. Right. Don't waste your time on these things, all right? That's the second cause. The third cause is fear of adversity and affliction, okay? And Imam al-Bulti talks about that, like this can come in two ways. It can be in the sense of where someone could be living generally a normal life in the sense they don't have any major tribulation. They don't have like a long-term illness. They're not horribly poor. But then they hear about other people having problems, and they think, "Oh, that could happen to me," right? And they worry about this. They worry about, "Oh, something might happen to me in the future," right? Or they might look at other people who are successful, other people who are doing well, and they think, "Oh, how come I'm not like that?" And again, this ties back to what I said before. Like again, you don't know what's khair for you. Again, people tend to be, and this ties in with the fifth cause as well, is people tend to sort of set goals and expectations in their life, again, on the assumption that that's a good thing for them. Like, well, I need to be married by 25, or whatever. I need to have my PhD when I'm 25, married by 27, my own house by 30, so on and so forth. And they sort of lay out their whole life. So this is what I need to do. And then if it doesn't work out, it's like disaster. Like, oh no, I didn't do it. I missed the deadline. I didn't. But like, why are you putting that goal on yourself, right? It's like Imam ibn Ta'il al-Iskandari, rahimahullah, the great alim and the Sufi. He has a whole book called At-Tanwir fi Isqat Tadbir, right? The illumination in dropping planning, right? Like if you're going to plan your life, like keep it general, like keep it open. Don't say to yourself, it has to be like this, like this, like this, like this, right? Because you're setting yourself up for disappointment. You're not recognizing, or you're ignoring your slave to Allah. And then under this branch, under this bit about fear of adversity and affliction, Imam al-Bulti brings up another point that people have, which is that some people, and this is like a branch. This is a branch of this, which is the fear of not being forgiven. This is a branch of this, and he says there are many young people. This is something that happens to young people a lot, where there are people who maybe they spent many years where they were removed from Allah, right? they weren't praying, maybe they weren't fasting, they weren't committed believers. And then maybe the age of, I think this could happen. It could be all teenage years. Maybe when they get to university, they realize they need to be more committed. Maybe when they get married. So it could happen at 25, 30, 35. They become committed. But then what happens is Shaitan jumps in. Shaitan jumps in and says, really? You're going to change now? You think you're going to be forgiven? When you spent X amount of years doing this, you were partying and drinking and messing around with girls and all these kind of things. You really think that you're going to change now? Right? And this can cause form of depression. And this is what Shaitan does to people. So, the answer, again, is in the Quran. Because Allah said this in Surah Zumar, I think it's Ayah 53, where Allah says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Right? All my slaves who've transgressed against their own souls, do not despair the mercy of Allah. Do not despair the mercy of Allah. Right? And what Imam al-Bulti, when he adds to that point, he says you have to ask yourself this question. He said, the greatest sign that Allah loves you is that He called you back. If Allah didn't love you, He wouldn't have brought you back from that precipice. He wouldn't have put that in you to say, you know what, I need to change. Because one day it happened. One day it happened where you said, you know what, I shouldn't live my life like this anymore. That in itself is a huge sign of Allah's love for you. Right? There's a story Imam al-Bulti has, because he has a commentary on the Hikmah of Ibn Ta'il al-Iskandari. MashaAllah, we're mentioning these big awliya. His first Hikmah is about relying on deeds, right? Not relying on Allah, right? So relying on deeds, not relying on Allah's mercy. And he puts in a story there, Imam al-Bulti puts a story of a servant girl in Damascus, and she would pray tahajjud at night. And one night she was praying tahajjud, and the master of the house heard her, and he went downstairs to watch her pray. He heard her, and she was in dua and sujood, and in her dua in sujood, she was saying to Allah, "O Allah, by your love for me, grant me such and such and grant me such and such. By your love for me, grant me such and such." And he's listening. And he's like, that's a bit presumptuous, right? And then when she finishes the dua, when she finishes the prayer, he asks her, he says, what are you doing? Why are you saying, like, by your love for me, by your love for me? And she said, in response, she said, if Allah didn't love me, He wouldn't wake me up at this hour and put me before Him. Right? It's like seeing that thing. And this ties in again with the, because again, when we're looking at this whole picture of, again, depression and anxiety, what this ties in is that, and maybe I should have said this at the beginning, you have to understand here, the greatest blessing of Allah towards you is nearness to Him. The greatest blessing Allah can give you is nearness to Him. Right? It's not the cars and the clothes, whatever. It's nearness to. And that's why it's beautiful that ayah the brother quoted at the beginning, mashallah, right? فَاذْكُرُونِي يَذْكُرْكُمْ. Allah said, remember me, I'll remember you. Right? But there's a hadith in the collection of Ibn Majah. I was reading this on a commentary of Al-Wafi. I have it here, that's what I brought with me. Where the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I'll just read out to you here. He said, مَا مَنَّ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عَلَى عَبْدِهِ مِثْلَ أَنْ يُلْحِمَهُ ذِكْرَهُ. Right? Meaning, there's no gift from Allah like the gift when He inspires His slave to remember Him. Right? So when you think about it this way, Allah says, فَاذْكُرُونِي يَذْكُرْكُمْ. Remember me, I'll remember you. But you're not going to remember Allah unless Allah inspires you first. Right? When I was reading this hadith, I was reading with some students online, and someone said, well, if that's the case, you should just be ecstatic. Right? Because it's like every time you're remembering Allah, Allah's remembering you. Allah's putting that in you. Imam al-Shafi in his Risala, he said something very similar. He said, because he's in his book on Usul al-Fiqh, but he, in the introduction, and he's praising Allah, and he says about Allah, he said, Alhamdulillah, alladhi la yatimu shukra ni'matin min ni'amihi illa bi ni'matin ukhra yalzimu shukra alayha. Meaning, that's close I can get to the Arabic quote. He said, what that means is, praise be to Allah, who cannot be thanked for one of His blessings except by way of another blessing from Him. Right? Meaning that you have to be grateful for your gratitude, right? You can't be grateful to Allah unless Allah puts that in you. You see, right? So we have to. This is something like profound to keep in mind. So we have to understand that if something's been put inside you to come back to Allah, if Allah's put that in you to come back to Him, that's a sign of Allah's love for you, and that should push you forward. And there's no reason at all whatsoever to despair. Then the fourth thing, because we just have two more to go over. The fourth thing is the fear of death. It's the fear of death, okay? And again, this is something especially that affects secular people because they can't escape the fact that as they grow older, they become weaker. They're not able to do all the things they used to do when they were young. They can't chase their pleasures and desires the way they used to. And this bothers them. And they think, oh, I don't have the ability. I can't travel like I used to. I can't mess around like I used to. But for us, it's a different story altogether because we know that death, as Allah says in the ayah, وَإِن مُتُّمْ وَقُتِلْتُمْ لِلَّهِ تُحْشَرُونَ, right? In Surah Al-Imran, ayah 158, Allah says that if you die or you're killed, it's to Allah that you return. So the way Imam Al-Bulti explains this is he says, you have to think of it this way, that you've spent your entire life worshiping Allah, praying 5 times a day, but you never saw Him. Fasting Ramadan, but you never saw Him. Hajj, Ramadan, reading the Quran, all the dhikr, but you never saw Allah. And now that veil is being lifted. That's what death is. That veil between you and Allah is being lifted. Right? There's a story that Imam Ghazali relates in the Ihya al-Madin. It's also in Sharh al-Sudur by Imam Suyuti, which is a book about the states of the dead, where the angel of death comes to Ibrahim alayhi salam. Right? And we all know that Ibrahim alayhi salam, his name is Al-Khalil, right? He's the intimate, close friend of Allah. And when the angel of death comes to him, Ibrahim alayhi salam, he responds and he says, أَرَأَيْتَ خَلِيلٍ يُرِيدُ أَن يَمِيتَ خَلِيلًا, right? He says, have you seen a Khalil who wants to cause his Khalil to die? Right? And then Allah reveals to Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, أَرَيْتَ خَلِيلًا لَا يُرِيدُ أَن يَرَى خَلِيلًا, meaning, have you seen a Khalil who doesn't want to meet his Khalil? Right? And then Ibrahim gives up. He says, fine. Right? Goes into sujood and Allah takes his soul. Right? So when it comes to, again, to death, we should see it as the fact that it's this reunion with Allah, and whatever good we've done in this life, the reward for it has been stored up for us. That's where it comes back. And when we die, and one of the things the ulama always stress is that, like for the believer on his deathbed, when you get to the end of your life, you should have nothing but a good opinion of Allah. Nothing but a good opinion of Allah when you're on your deathbed. Right? And this is part of the reason why, like Imam Suyuti mentions that in Sharh al-Sudur, he says that the believer on his deathbed, the believer will have a hard death. He'll have a difficult death. There'll be some illness or some agony. And the unbeliever will have an easy life, will have an easy death. And what he means by this, or why this is, he says the unbeliever will have the easy life, will have the easy death because he's being rewarded for whatever good he did. And then the punishment starts after death. Whereas the believer is being forgiven. He's being cleansed and purified before he goes back to Allah. Right? It's all about mercy. And Imam Al-Bulti puts in a story here from the Sahabi Bilal al-Habashi radhiallahu anhu. And then when he was lying on his deathbed, and he's in agony, right, he's in pain, he's on his deathbed, and his relatives were all around him. And one of them said, oh, what agony, what pain you're in. And then Bilal, he sort of woke up, he opened his eyes, he said, no, what joy. Tomorrow I will be with Muhammad and his companions. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right? He saw the bigger picture. Right? I'm going to be reunited with the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You see, right? And we all know how Bilal was after the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away. Right? Like you couldn't give the adhan because he was so heartbroken. Right? So people aren't, we look at the rank of the companions, they're not desperate to stay here. And this is again, when we tie this all in, and again, we go back to go back to the point of like where we come from, the fact that like we're originally from Jannah. And I try to think of an analogy, but probably the best analogy I can think of, and Allah knows best, is that this world is just like a giant hotel. That's what it is, right? Everyone's room is booked and paid for, and Allah knows when you're going to check out. Allah knows you're going to check out. One day you'll get that phone call, and the angel of death will come and take you away. So when you think about death, you're just going back home. Do you know anyone who clings to a hotel? Right? I don't care if it's a 7-star hotel, whatever it is, right? Home sweet home. There's nothing like home, right? So you accept the fact, okay, this is not where I belong. This is not where I'm from. This is not my permanent abode. Allah is calling me back. Accept it, right? Why would we cling to this cling to this dunya that is temporary? It's full of trials. It's full of tribulations. Allah is just testing us. It's just a testing ground, right? It's like an examination room, right? I don't know anyone who enjoys exams, right? You're happy when the exam is over, right? With GCSEs and O levels or whatever it is. Not O levels anymore. Sorry, I'm dating myself. But of course, right? You get the idea. And then the final thing, I won't take too much of your time. And again, I'm happy to, of course, Baruch Osman, have there's Q&A. There's a Q&A afterwards. I'm happy to do that, inshallah. So this last bit about the inability to achieve personal ambition. So I won't go into too much depth about this. But again, this is, in this chapter, because again, people set these ambitions and goals for themselves, and they say, this is what I have to achieve in my life, this is what I'm supposed to do, I'm supposed to set up my business, or I'm supposed to get a PhD, or I'm supposed to have this many kids, or whatever it is. And then these things don't get realized. And we've already discussed that, again, this is part of the false belief that you think that this thing is khair for you, and therefore you have to achieve it. But in this chapter, what Imam al-Bulti goes into heavily in this is he talking more and more about the importance of dhikr. The importance of dhikr, right? And he quotes again the ayah in Surah Al-Ra'd, ayah 28, where Allah says, "Ala bi dhikrillahi tatma'innul qulub," right? It's only by the remembrance of Allah that the hearts find peace. And so this is the importance of constantly staying in a state of dhikr. Again, like the hadith I quoted earlier from Ibn Majah, there's no blessing like Allah inspiring you to do dhikr of Him. So, and part of the dhikr, and he said the dhikr is not the dhikr of the tongue so much, but it starts with the tongue. The dhikr is the tongue is the manifestation of it, but it has to be dhikr in the heart, where you start connecting everything that you see and experience to Allah. Everything you see and experience has to go back to Allah. So you have to see Allah as al-mun'im, right? Allah is the bestower of blessings, right? So everything that comes your way, whether it's health or wealth or friends or family, whatever it is, people are good to you, you start saying, alhamdulillah, Allah is the one who sent this person. Allah is the one who sent this thing. There's an interesting video. There's a Shaykh in Egypt, Shaykh Yusri Gabr, and he made a very interesting, it ties into gratitude. He made an interesting khutbah. This was like way back this is January 2021. This is like, again, middle of COVID and lockdowns. And he gave a beautiful khutbah, and he kind of put it all together. And he said, and he got up on the minbar. Again, this is the middle of the lockdowns. And he said, look at the world right now. He said, Allah has shut down all the pubs, all the brothels, all these other places of sin, all these casinos. Allah has shut them down. See? And he didn't say the governments or the politicians. He said, Allah's done this, right? Because we fail to do that sometimes, right? We don't to see Allah's the one acting, right? Kullu yawmin huwa fi shan. Surah Ar-Rahman, ayah 29. Allah is in control. This is part of the problem, because again, if you're hanging around Christians, which we do because they're around us, right? They tend to have a different belief, right? They sit back and go, how can God let this happen? No. Allah's not letting anything happen. Allah is making it happen. فَعَالٌ لِمَا يُرِيدُ. Right? He makes things happen. So, what he says in that khutbah, Shaykh Yusri Gabr, is he tells a beautiful story of Imam Abu Hassan al-Shadili. Right? I'm sure you all know who Imam Abu Hassan al-Shadili is, right? The great wali of Allah. And he said when he was in his youth, Imam Abu Hassan al-Shadili, he used to ask Allah constantly for a fet, right? Like an opening. And what I mean by fet is the idea of, love of the dunya is removed and love of Allah is put in the heart. And he used to like fast in the day and do hajj at night, and he'd beg Allah for this. And then one night, in tahajjud, he got ilham from Allah. right? Inspiration from Allah, right? And this happens to the awliya, right? They get a voice, they get some inspiration from Allah. And this is backed up by Surah Al-Qaf, the 50th chapter, verse 16. Allah says, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ, right? We're closer to him than a jugular vein. And the voice said to him, because this is inspiration from Allah, said, عَلَيْكَ أَن تَكُونَ عَبْدًا شُكُورًا, right? You must be a grateful slave. And so Imam Abu Hassan Shadli, he said back and said, how can I be a grateful slave? How do I do that? And the voice says, أن ترى أنك المؤنم الوحيد في الكون. You have to see yourself as the only person who's blessed in creation. You're the only person who's blessed, right? Which you think about, that's the flip side of the victim mentality, right? Which be like, the victim mentality, no one suffers like me. My life is the worst. No, you flip the script, right? Only see yourself as you're the only person blessed in all of creation. And Shaykh Yusuf Gabbar, he goes on to explain it. He says that you have to see everything that Allah is doing, whether it's at the individual level, the local level, the global level. So whether you're thinking about trials, tribulations you're going through, whether it's big global things like a pandemic or a war, you have to see everything that Allah is doing is about bringing you closer to Him. That's what Allah is doing. He's trying to bring you closer. He's inviting you back to Him. Right? He wants, this is like Imam Sha'rawi says in his tafsir, he says when Allah loves His slaves, He will try those slaves, He'll test those slaves, just so that slave turns back and says, Ya Rabb. Just so that slave says, Oh Lord. Just because Allah wants to hear you say that. So this is what Allah is doing. So you have to see yourself as al-mu'min al-wahid, right? And then the next thing that happens in the story is Abu Hassan Shadili. He says to Allah, he says, well, how can I be al-mu'min al-wahid? How can I be this most blessed person of all the creation when you have prophets and you have messengers, right? And they have revelation from you and they speak to you and they have greater ma'rifah of you, they have greater knowledge of you than I do. And then the voice comes back and says, مَا أَرْسَلْتُهُمْ إِلَّا لِأَجْلِكَ يَا عَلِي. I only sent them for you. Right? All the prophets and messengers, only sent them for you. Right? So this all ties in. This is how we have to see. We have to see that the Quran, the ulama say that they said when you're reading the Quran, you have to believe that Allah is speaking to you. Allah is addressing you. Right? The messenger of Allah ﷺ, was sent to you. Right? Like Allah, this again and again, this is just a few lines after the ayah we quoted in Surah Imran, I think it's ayah 163, where Allah says that Allah has blessed the believers by sending them a messenger amongst themselves. Right? He's sent to you. He's an example to you. Right? So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to take this and put it really in terms of a it's like a person. It's a personal relationship. You have to believe that Allah is speaking to you. The Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he's a rahmatul lil alameen, and he's speaking to you, and he cares about you. So and you put that all together, and you think about the fact that as a final thing, I'll finish here on this point, is that we are part of this ummah. Right? When you think the fact that we're part of this ummah, I've already mentioned the fact that you don't remember Allah unless Allah remembers you, but also be grateful for the fact that we're part of this ummah of al-Habib sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The fact that on Yawm al-Qiyamah, when the Shafa'at al-Kubra, the great intercession, the fact that the mankind will go to all the prophets seeking for help, and each prophet from Adam alayhi salam onwards, they're all going to say, I can't, right? I fear my Lord today. I fear for myself on this day. And then they go to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he says, Ummati, Ummati. My ummah. Cares about my ummah. Right? There's also the narration from Wahab ibn Munabbih where he talks about how Musa alayhi salam, right? One of the greatest prophets of Allah, with Azm, right? Where he read about the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his book, right? And he said to Allah, he read about this ummah, right? And this is mentioned in the book, I think it's the beginning of the Lives of Man by Imam al-Haddad. He said to Allah, he read about this ummah, and he said, who is this ummah? He said, well, who is this ummah that if they do one bad deed, it just counts as one bad deed. But if they do one good deed, it counts as 10 good deeds. Oh Allah, make that my ummah. It's like, no, that's the ummah of Ahmed. And he mentions like maybe 10 or 15 things. He's like, who is this ummah? Who is this ummah? Who is this ummah? And each time Musa alayhi salam says, make that my ummah, make that my ummah. No, that's the ummah of Ahmed. Sallallahu alayhi wa to the point at the end, Musa alayhi salam says, oh Allah, make me part of his ummah. Right? And then Allah says, you have to accept what I've given you. But think about that. This is Kalim Allah. This is the message. This is a prophet who spoke to Allah. Allah spoke to him directly. But he's asking Allah to make him part of the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right? So count your blessings. Allahu Akbar. So I'll finish there, inshallah. I think I've spoken long enough. Alhamdulillah, and I'll open the floor for questions and answers, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. Okay. Alhamdulillah. So the brother is asking about how do we tie this all into what's happening with the genocide in Gaza. Alhamdulillah. So this again ties in with what I said earlier about how you have to look at every single event as Allah bringing you closer to Him. And he gave a khutbah about this because this isn't the first time that Gaza has been attacked, obviously. And this is not the first time that the Palestinians have suffered. This has been going on for 75 years now. And he said, when he gave advice to giving Jumu'ah in Damascus, he said that everyone should turn to what's called Siham al-Ashar, right, which is the arrows of the pre-dawn hours, right? And this goes back to Surah Al-Dhariyat, 51st chapter, ayah 18, where Allah says, in those pre-dawn hours they seek forgiveness. So this is a call to tahajjud, a call to make dua at that time and to make dua for those people and make dua against these enemies of Allah. And this is all part of drawing ourselves nearer to Allah and lifting these tribulations. It's also advisable again to do Salat al-Hajjah. Salat al-Hajjah is a very, very powerful dua because you call on the haqq of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And in Salat al-Hajjah. Salat al-Hajjah is a very, very powerful dua. And this is a dua, again, if you can do this in the daytime when you're fasting, if you can do it in the nighttime, very, very powerful. And I think also to step back and look at the bigger picture, right? So first of all, we know that the people who are dying over there, they're shuhada, right? They've achieved martyrdom, they've achieved this rank with Allah. There are stories, I read reports coming out. I follow this news daily. The reports come out of there, and there's so many like signs there about what's going on. Because again, we can't be hopeless and think, okay, how's Allah letting this happen? No, Allah's in control. Allah's in control. So, for example, Palestinians will give reports and they'll say that our shuhada, our martyrs, we find these dead bodies, and they smell beautiful. For example, they smell beautiful, right? They're well maintained, they're well preserved. Whereas there was a report early on in the conflict where some IDF soldiers, some people say IOF, some people IDF. I say IDF because they wear diapers, right? Israeli Diaper Force. That's true, right? They're so scared, but. There was a report early on where and this is a TV broadcast where an Israeli a doctor he took a camera crew inside like it was like a fridge where they were storing the dead bodies of Israeli soldiers, right? And they'd only been dead for maybe 24 hours, right? And he took the camera crew in and he said, "Do you notice that?" He said, "It stinks." He said, "These bodies stink," right? Like usually a dead body's not going to start stinking until maybe 6-7 days later. This is like within 24 hours, and they're in a fridge. These bodies stink. You see, so these are signs that Allah's not with these people. And one of the beautiful du'as that people have been making, especially in the qunut, like qunut al-nazila and fajr, is they say Allahumma shattid shamlahum, which means like Allah break their ranks, and that's been happening, right? So a lot of things we've seen is that there's been horrible disunity amongst them, right? Political infighting, social infighting. What do we do about is it about the hostages? Is it about Hamas? Is it about this? They're constantly at each other's throats, right? And what's happened is we take this to say the positive message of this is the fact that whole people have come to see the reality of what Zionism is, right? It's like the whole Holocaust narrative is that's kind of gone away now. People are like, no, you're doing a Holocaust, right? We used to feel sorry for you, like, oh, you poor victim, and now it's like, no, you're doing a Holocaust. This is Nazism 2.0. This is what's going on here. So people are seeing the realization of this. I was doing a podcast on this, and I was asked about this point. The Israelis themselves have realized that the Israeli think tank did a study. They realized that like 95% of the protests around the world, the marches, are pro-Palestine. 95%, right? When they have their votes in the UN, it's like 140, 150 to like 2, right? It's huge. The PR war is lost, right? No one sees Israel that way anymore. No one sees them as all the poor victims. Everyone sees them. Wait a second. This is just a settler colony. This is just like a throwback to the British Empire. What's it doing there? Everyone's asking these kind of questions. And then on the flip side of that is that people are also seeing the reality of the Palestinians. People are realizing, like, subhanAllah, how are these guys so resilient? Right? People are seeing reports of people who are there, and you see like a man, and he's lost everything. His house is bombed, his family's dead, and he's saying, Alhamdulillah. Right? That's why you've got like these TikTokers and YouTubers. They're realizing, like, whoa, what's with these people? Oh yeah, they're Muslims, and then they pick up a translation of the Quran, and then they read the Quran. And they're like, huh, right? And then they become Muslim, right? Because again, in this ties, we're talking about depression, anxiety. They're turning to the Quran and realizing, it's the fact, it's their faith in Allah that makes them like this, right? Israelis acknowledge this. There was some sort of Israeli scholar. He was on Israeli TV saying, we don't know what we're up against, right? He said, we go into the battlefield, we're not thinking about God. When they're on the battlefield, the Palestinians, they absolutely 100% believe that Allah is with them. They believe Allah is with them on the battlefield. Allah is making things happen. That's what they believe. We said, we don't have that. That's why they're so scared. That's why they're running away. That's why they're wearing diapers, right? They don't get that. So there's all these like greater wisdoms and benefits that are coming out of it, you see, right? And Allah does it through different ways. Allah does it through, for example, like the South African case, right, which did prove the point. And some people think, okay, well, it didn't firmly convict him. Well, no. People forget that like the South African International Court of Justice case, that was actually about discussing the possibility. It wasn't about convicting Israel of genocide. It was like, is there actual grounds for a case of genocide? And that was confirmed, right? But now the ICJ will have to do like further study, maybe over several months, maybe in a year, and then draw a conclusion. But even that has led to some people. I think there's a district in Belgium which says we're no longer selling them weapons anymore. Other countries have taken up other cases against them. Then there was this issue with there's something called some sort of relief agency that the UN has that's especially for the Gazans, right? So some countries stopped donating to them. It's like they're tied to Hamas, and they stopped donating anything. They're part of October 7th. But then other countries stepped in and that's doubled, tripled their support. Like Spain was like, okay, we'll triple our donations. America's not have to pay anymore. Fine, we'll triple it. Norway stepped in. All these things are coming together, and even in America, right? Right, because people say there's an old joke. I remember this from when I was in university 20 years ago. People would say like, Israel occupies Palestine. People say, no, Israel occupies the U.S. Right? The Congress is Knesset West, right? All the control and power they have over there, they're losing that grip, right? You're having massive pro-Palestinian protests in Texas. Right, in Dallas, these kind of places. Like, how is that happening? You see, so this whole sort of grip is rooting, and Jews are coming forward. Like, there's even Jews coming forward. There are the normal Jews who've always been against Palestine. May Allah guide them, like people like Finkelstein and Chomsky and so forth. But there's other Jews who are coming forward. They're realizing, like, we need to stop doing this, because otherwise we're going to be seen as just like the Nazis of this age. That's how we're going to be seen, and people will not need to do with Israel. There's a Muslim brother as well who gives good reports. His name is Muhammad Oud. He does like daily reports, like 20 minutes. And he keeps track, right? He keeps track of like what's going on. And what he's been following, for example, is he's been following how many Israelis, quote unquote Israelis, have actually left since October 7th. Because people forget a lot of them are dual citizens. right? They're dual citizens. They have like Canadian passports, American passport, British passport, dual citizen. A lot of them, his estimate is that since October 7th, about 3 million have left. They've actually left. They're like not coming back. They're like, we're not safe here, right? Safe place for the Jews. Well, a lot of cynical nonsense. But he said like so he said up to the end of November, it was about 1 million, and that was official statistics. But I didn't know, they actually said 1 million have left, right? Tells you who's attached to land, doesn't it? Right? As soon as it's not safe here, get on the plane, right? So the whole people are seeing that this whole Israel it's fake. It's a construct. Those people do not have attachment to the land. They don't really feel they belong there. They don't feel safe. And at the slightest trial and tribulation, they'll get up and leave, right? Well, the Palestinians are like, we're not going anywhere. This is our land. We're not going anywhere. You can bomb my house. I'll still sit in it. No roof. It's my house. It's my land. I'm not going anywhere. Whereas for them, right, they just pack up and leave because they're not attached to it. And you also think of the situation that like in the north of quote-unquote Israel, that's all abandoned now, right? Because Hezbollah have been bombing the area on and on and on. Those people they've left. They've moved down to places like they've moved south, right, where they're out of the range of Hezbollah rockets. Then you've got all the people, all the ones that used to live around Gaza there. They've moved north. It's like abandoned, right? The whole thing is like it's just a fake construct, and people are realizing that wait a second, you don't have to take over the thing. All you have to do is just make them feel unsafe, and they leave. They're not attached to the land. It's like another thing I'll mention is, do you know that the DNA tests are banned in Israel? Do you know that DNA tests are banned, right? Because what would happen if they all did DNA tests? They'd realize they have nothing to do with that place. Wait a second, I'm Polish. Yeah. I'm Kazakh. Whoops. I have absolutely no answers. I have no link to this place whatsoever. That's why they banned it. So alhamdulillah, people are realizing that stuff. So I think overall this khair, and I think again these are things that are just, again, it's all about bringing us back to Allah and realizing things and just waking up to these kinds of realities, right? That don't fall for all this stuff about, you know, the rules-based international order and all that kind of stuff, and they care about us and they like us. No, they don't. Let's wake up. I mean, just something today. It's the last point I'll make before I move on. Like I saw something today where I think some Muslim brother on Twitter. He was just saying he's addressing the current prime minister and the opposition leader. I don't want to say their names, but he's addressing them and said, "Thank you. I thank you for your stance for being genocidal apologists and enablers, because you've woken up our youth." Right? Our youth were a bit docile. Now they've woken up, they've realized, whoa, these people are evil. I better get myself straight. It's thanking them, right? So, alhamdulillah, just look at the bigger picture and see what Allah is actually doing. Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu feekum. Next question. Yes, sir. Okay. Alhamdulillah. So, to answer that question, so first of all, and this is why I put that in the introduction, right? Because I'm not a mental health professional, right? So disclaimer. Right, so I don't want to get into legal trouble on these points. So obviously, if someone does have a genuine like mental health situation, like schizophrenia or autism or something like that, that's a separate issue. But the point is that the person who's depressed or anxious has to start looking at their relationship with Allah and looking at, okay, what are some things, because every human being, every Muslim knows, right? I don't have to tell you, but every Muslim knows. You can think of something that you do that you should not do. And you can think of something that you're not doing that you should be doing. Like, maybe I should be memorizing more Quran. Maybe I should be going to the masjid more. Maybe, there's something to think of, right? Or maybe there's some habit that you have that you know you should leave off, right? Maybe I should stop watching EastEnders. Or whatever it is, right? There's something that you've got to leave off. I would say as a good practical starting point for depression and anxiety, is a good practical thing, is, and I talked about this as well, is about gratitude. I think there's a big thing. So I think one thing that was really effective is, because what's funny about secular psychology is they keep talking about be grateful. You need to be grateful, right? But it's like, be grateful to who? Right? They'll tell you, just be grateful. Okay. No. So what I highly recommend is to do what's called a gratitude list, where take a pen and paper. It's better. It's more effective than your phone, right? Take a pen and paper, and before you go to bed at night, just write down 10 things you're grateful for to Allah, right? So now on day one, you're probably going to write about the big things. On day one, you're probably, okay, I'm grateful for my faith, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for my job, I'm grateful for my house, and so on and so forth, right? But then day 2, day 3 onwards, you have to start thinking about your day. Like, okay, like what are some like good things that happened, right? And then you start seeing, okay, actually, so-and-so helped me with my shopping, or so-and-so opened a door for me, or so-and-so gave me salams, or so, right? And then again, this goes back to this, the hadith in Bukhari related by Anas and Malik, where it's a hadith Qudsi, where Allah says, Ana indi dhanni abdi bi, right? I am as my slave sees me, right? So again, unbelievers, they've caught on to this. They've realized, wait a second, if you always say to yourself, bad things always happen to me, right? Then bad things do happen to you, because that's all you're seeing. That's your perspective. You're seeing bad things always happen to me, right? Whereas when you take the gratitude list, you start seeing, wait a second, there are actually good things happen to me all the time. You actually see them, and then you're grateful. You're actually saying, wait a second, despite everything, good things happen to me, right? Because again, people create these narratives, right? People wake up in the morning, right? Especially unbelievers, they wake up in the morning, they bang their head or stub their toe, and like, oh no, today's a bad day, right? And then the day is bad because why? Because they focus on all the bad things that happen, because days are mixed. Well, good things and bad things happen every day, right? But you focus on the good things, and then he's grateful to Allah, and then that pulls you back from that brink. You start realizing, wait a second, despite everything, there are still good things happening. Allah's still doing good things for me, despite my situation. I can still see the khair. It's like I'll give you a story of a Muslim brother I know up in Yorkshire. He's actually someone I turn to when I think of my tribulation. I look at his, because he has some severe tribulations. He had a tribulation, and Allah got him over it. I think his son was 4 years old. His son was diagnosed with cancer, right? It's a huge tribulation for him. And so they came home for the doctors. They had the diagnosis, and he said to his wife, he said, I just need to go out for a drive. I need to go out for a drive. I just need to clear my head and think about this. And I think he made some dua to Allah. And he said, oh Allah, just help me with the situation. And he said, Allah, just give me some sort of positive sign or something, right? And then while he was driving, he saw something. I forget what it was, but while he was driving, he saw something positive, right? And it put a smile on his face, right? And he came home, and he walked to the house, and he had a big smile on his face. His wife's like, are you insane? We're here with our son. Our son's got disease. But he said, no. I said, Allah gave me a sign, and we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. And then he told me a story of this brother. He told me a story of another brother he knows, and he's the brother that he goes to follow, who has worse tribulations. Now, there's a brother he knows. I don't know if he's still alive, but this brother, again, he's roughly maybe 40, 41, and he's had a lot of tribulations in his life. And my friend said to me, he said, this brother, let's call him Brother A. Brother A, he said the least of his tribulations is that he had his leg amputated when he was young, right? That's like the least of his tribulations, right? And he's had problems with his family, he's had problems with marriages and divorces, and he's had all kinds of tribulations, right? And then what happened was he got some sort of health condition where he would start, he could freeze up, and then he'd like black out, and then he'd wake up again, right? This is some condition came upon him. And then he went to the doctor to get a diagnosis, and the doctor did the test and everything. The doctor said to him, he said, you've got a condition and it's fatal. What's going to happen is your body's going to keep doing that, and eventually you're just going to shut down and not wake up. This is the diagnosis the doctor gave him. So Brother A, he receives the diagnosis, he goes back home, he speaks to my friend, we'll call him Brother B. And Brother B says to him, so what did the doctor say? He said, well, the doctor said to me that this is this, and eventually my body's just going to shut down and that'll be the end of me. And Brother B was like, no. And he looks up, and then Brother A has a big smile on his face. And he says, Alhamdulillah, I'm finally going to get some rest. I'm going to go back to Allah. Right? And just accepted it, you see. So, again, I think you think of these things put all these things in consideration. Again, I would say start with a gratitude list. Think about people who have greater tribulations. And again, to tie it in with like again with what the brother mentioned about like the situation in Gaza, right? Like you think of your tribulations, think what they're going through, right? Like I went to Asda, and they didn't have my cupcakes. Right? I mean, there are people who don't have, they literally lost everything, and they're praising Allah. So I hope that helps. Does that answer your question? Okay, Barakallahu feek. Anything else? Okay. Alhamdulillah. Well, that goes back to what I was saying before about, we have that study proving that chemical imbalance is built on flimsy evidence. The point I'm making here about this book is you have to look at your relationship with Allah first, right? If this does not work, then maybe there is something underlying. There is something fundamentally wrong, right? So there is something deeper, like autism, whatever it is. But the point is, you have to accept that your relationship with Allah can always be improved. It can always be improved, right? You can't say to yourself, "No, my relationship with Allah is perfect," right? That's arrogance. Oh, you're a prophet? I'm sorry, you're an angel? No, you're a human being. So your relationship with Allah can always be improved. And this is part of the what the Imam al-Bulti is talking about in this book. And that's what makes it effective, is that you work on your relationship with Allah and you get secure. So it's not simply a clinical thing, and therefore you just need some pharmaceuticals. Alhamdulillah. Yeah. Okay. So good. Alhamdulillah, so I was asking about the balance. So there's a beautiful dua that people should make, which is Allahumma inni ala husni dhanni bik, right? Oh Allah, help me have a good opinion of you. Okay, but at the same time, like tawakkul ala Allah is always tied to action, right? So simply put, you do your best and Allah does the rest. Right? You do whatever it is that you can do, whatever is within your capacity to do, and then you put your tawakkul on Allah, right? So this is mentioned again, like Imam Ghazali mentions in the Ihya, like you have to be like the sparrow that goes out, he puts his trust in Allah, but he still goes out and looks for the food, then comes back, right? Tawakkul on Allah is not to sit at home and wait for the food to come to you, or wait for the risk to come to you. No, you have to keep out and going trying. So if someone's unemployed, someone keeps trying and trying and trying to find a work, to find a job, to set up a business, whatever it is, and hope from Allah for the best. And again, situations like this, like unemployment, can be tests. Of course, it is a test, but it's also, again, whatever tribulation you're in, whether it's an illness or unemployment or whatever it is, you want to take that, turn it around, and turn it as an opportunity to draw nearer to Allah, to realize, okay, this is happening because Allah wants me to come closer. That's why this is happening. Allah wants me to rectify myself and come closer. So you take the opportunity, you start fasting more, you pray the Tahajjud, you pray Salat al-Hajjah, you rectify yourself. Because one of the things that, again, the Imam al-Bulti makes very clear in this series, which is in the book, is he said that we're talking here about spiritual medicine, right? This is spiritual medicine. This isn't pharmaceutical medicine. Because again, put it this way, when you think of like pharmaceuticals, right? Like when you get an infection, you go to the doctor says, okay, well, take this antibiotic for 7 days, then come back to me, right? Or if you're still feeling bad, come back to me, right? You take it for a period of time, and then you stop, right? When it comes to this medicine, the spiritual medicine, once you take it on, you don't stop, right? So if you're ill or you're unemployed or the situation is, and then as a result of that, you start fasting, you start praying tahajjud, you start doing Salat al-Hajjah, you start giving sadaqah, you start doing all these other extra things because you're trying to near to Allah. Once you get a job or you get cured, you don't stop. Oh, it's done now, okay. No more tahajjud. No, because now you've lost the whole purpose. Allah gave you that test to bring you closer to Him. That's why that test happened. So once you're on that path, you keep working on it, you stay on it. In order to draw nearer to Allah. So you have that balance where you're turning to Allah and you're doing whatever you can within your capacity to fix your situation. Does that answer the question? طيب إن شاء الله. بارك الله فيك.